Israel is, by many measures, the country relative to its population that's done the most to contribute to the technology revolution.
When you look at the NASDAQ, companies are listed from around the world. There's one country, though, that truly stands out, and that is Israel.
If you're persecuting us, we would not flourish. That's always been our story. They terrorize us, the more we innovate. Israel is leading the world. All of the billion-dollar companies in the entire world.
What I really want to talk to you about is something you said. The more that they persecute Israel and the Jews, the more innovation, right? You didn't really, I mean, I sort of get it, but I would love to hear from your perspective because this is really the world you live in. Connect those two for me.
Yeah, sure. So we're all familiar with the phrase Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live, but I don't know how many actually think about that phrase, right? It's not just an empty phrase. It's a historical reality, right? And if you don't believe me, then open your phone and check how many Babylonian friends you have, because I don't have any. Where are they? Where'd they go, right? Where's ancient Egypt? Where's the Roman Empire? Where's the Greek Empire? Where's the Nazi Empire? Where's the Soviet Empire? They're all gone. We're here, right? And, you know, you look back really to the earliest days, even before we were the Jewish people, we were the Israelites in Egypt. And we were enslaved for 210 years. And the Torah, the Bible, and I don't mean the commentary on the Bible, I mean the Bible, literally says the more the Egyptians persecuted the Israelites, the stronger the Israelites, the more they reproduced and the stronger they got, which is the most counterintuitive thing in the world. You would think, you know, they'd be persecuting us. We would not flourish, right? But that's our story. That's always been our story. And, you know, we see that throughout history. And now we see it that the more they terrorize us, the more we innovate. You're looking at a country, you know, I'll remind you and your viewers, smaller than New Jersey, in one might say the most dangerous neighborhood on earth, right? And yet you look at tech, you look at innovation, and Israel dominates across all sectors.
Israel is, by many measures, the country relative to its population that's done the most to contribute to the technology revolution.
Now, when you look at the NASDAQ, companies are listed from around the world. There's one country, though, that truly stands out, and that is Israel.
There's no such thing as a sector of technology in which Israel is not a dominant player, which is, again, given the size and the volatility of the region, it's counterintuitive, but that is our story.
And I think that makes sense. Now, I guess the question that I really have is, we have in Judaism, obviously, the concept of to heal the world, right? One of the things my friends always ask me in the States is, how is it that such large swatches, the vast majority of of American Jews, vote Democratic when it's clearly, at least as it's currently construed, against their interest? You brought up that the whole concept of heal the world, right, tikkun olam, right, to heal the world, but you see it very differently in terms of through the lens of innovation, right? Because that's what we really want to do. The only thing that people in this country really know, whether they're Jew or Gentile, is that Israel is Jewish homeland and Israel is a U.S. ally. But there's all this technology that Israel is responsible for that no one knows about.
Right. So first of all, just in terms of your original statement, I don't actually know the numbers, the accurate numbers about how many Jews voted for Kamala. I know that there are polls, but the polls are skewed because they left out many states. They were, the polls were taken in specific states. So I don't really know the exact numbers. I would find it very hard to believe that the numbers that they're reporting of like 70% of the Jews voted for Kamala, I would find that very hard to believe that that's true. Although crazier things have happened. But, when it comes to tikkun olam, this isn't a question of like, we're better than anyone else, right? It's not what it's about. It's about, our value system, right? We value education, right? As opposed to our enemies that we know what they teach their kids. And so when, you put such a strong focus on family values and on education, you see the results and you see that, a completely disproportionate number of Nobel Prizes were granted to Jews. It makes no sense. Again, we're 0.25% of the population. So, and by the way, if you look at the media and you don't know that number, that we're 0.25%, but you think we're like 70% of the population because we dominate the news cycle, which is in and of itself a whole discussion. But as far as making the world a better place, I mean, you look at things like cancer research, right? I mean, I had the opportunity many years ago to interview a man named Dr. Rick Klausner, who is the director of the National Cancer Institute, and the man that every U.S. president came to with a blank check and said, here, cure cancer. He managed more cancer research money than anyone in the world. And I had the chance to interview him, and I asked him about, why is it that we have AI and, self-driving cars and drones and all this stuff, but we can't crack cancer? And he said, we have cracked cancer. He said, we've learned how to take a person's immune system and attack the cancer. And that, that blew my mind. He said, many of these cures are still in the labs, they're not FDA approved. But then he continued and he told me that all of these leading cures and treatments are all developed in Israel. All of them. We have cracked certain types of cancer and actually cured them. True?
That's exactly right. We've finally figured out, after 100 years of trying, how to rein in a person's immune system and direct it to kill their own cancer. We're in the headquarters of this new company, Wisdo.
Wisdo.com.
Israel.
It's wild. I mean, I'll just give you, one example among literally hundreds. If you look at the different types of cancer, right, there are some that are obviously, very hard to cure, pancreatic and things like that. But then there are types of cancer that are very curable, cervical cancer. So how are people still dying of cervical cancer? Because they don't get tested, because the test is very invasive. Comes along an American-Israeli entrepreneur, and he starts a company called Mobile ODT that developed some cutting-edge light technology that can detect cervical cancer with no physical contact with the patient. So it basically removes the entire kind of barrier. And this thing has been deployed in thousands of hospitals around the world. It's saving millions of lives. And that's just one example. And cancer is just one example, right? You look at mental health. I mean, the list is endless. When it comes to technology that's making an impact, Israel is leading the world.
It's fascinating to hear you talk about this, because it's like that old argument, give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish, right? So there's one interpretation of this saying that's, oh, well, we're, basically socialism, right? Where, oh, we're just going to go give everything to everybody, and nobody's going to have money and all the whatever, versus, no, we're going to go create things. We're going to go innovate. We're going to go change the world and make it a better place actively by creating.
Yeah, listen, someone recently said to me something that I just loved. It resonated so deeply. He said, I didn't come to Israel because I'm a Zionist. I came to Israel because I'm a capitalist, which is amazing, right? Because, when I was growing up, if you'd come to Israel, there was only one reason, and that's because you were a hardcore Zionist. Because back in the day, coming to Israel, you'd have to sacrifice a lot. You'd have to lower your quality of life compared to your American lifestyle. Today, Israel's at the pinnacle of the world of technology. And, I just came from a cafe 20 minutes from here, and I sat with some Americans who were visiting. And I said to all of them, I said, look around you. Do you feel like you're in a war zone? Yes, we're in a war.
Wow.
Yes, people are dying. Don't misunderstand. I'm not belittling, obviously, the losses and the devastation, but we move on. We move on with life, right? We don't forget, obviously, but we carry on. We got to do what we got to do. And again, that's our story. So, Israel is at the peak of capitalism. And if you look at the capitalistic world, Israel is at the top of the top.
Wow. I like it.
And explain the concept to our listeners of the unicorns, because I know you referenced that as well. I have to be honest, not a term I was familiar with. And again, in terms of the investment in capital in the companies in Israel, talk a little bit about that, because people need to understand, America needs to understand everything that's going on in Israel and why it's so seminally important beyond the U.S. ally and beyond just the Jewish homeland.
Well, that's really important. It's a really important point, because, when our enemies talk about, a disproportionate number of, dollars foreign aid coming to Israel, they don't realize that this is a mutually beneficial relationship. In fact, if anybody's on the receiving end here, it's America, not Israel, right? The amount of technology that Israel ships to America is unparalleled, right? And so when it comes to tech, if I'm going to oversimplify for 1 second, there's, I guess you could say, two types of companies. There's a public company, which is, Wall Street, you could buy stocks, things like that. And there are private companies, which generally are funded by venture capitalists and are owned privately. And so the term unicorn refers to a private company that has surpassed the valuation of $1 billion. It's called a unicorn because it was once upon a time very, very rare. Today, it's a little bit less rare, so maybe they need to come up with a new term. But, that is what a unicorn means. And if you look at the number of unicorns in Israel, it's hard to believe, like literally hard to believe that Israel, this country, as I said before, smaller than New Jersey, has a tenth of the entire world's unicorns. So all of the billion-dollar companies in the entire world, Israel has a tenth of them. I think we've surpassed all of the unicorns in the entire European Union, which again is just it's staggering, right? But that's just one metric to look at when you look at the Israeli tech ecosystem. You could look at capital invested, just to give you context, just perspective here. In 2020, $11 billion were invested in Israeli startups. 2020, $11 billion, which I think we can agree is a pretty remarkable number for a country this small. 2021, 26 billion. We went from 11 billion to 26 billion in 1 year. It's hard to fathom, but that's the reality here. We are defying all logic, and it's just unbelievable to see that as we grow and grow, the media and the global community is like, they can't sustain this. There's no way Israel can sustain this. This is a fluke. It can't. And the next quarter comes and we break another record. It's unbelievable to watch.
New technology coming out of Israel that people don't know about. Where are the next breakthroughs coming from?
Here's the thing. We all know that in a couple of years, our cars are not going to have steering wheels, right? We know that. There's no secret. Autonomous cars are right around the corner. Now, by the way, I have to tell you, I hear your response and I hear that reaction. And I have to say right now, even if you take the current situation right now and you take autonomous cars compared to human drivers right now, there's no question that autonomous cars are safer right now.
No way.
99
No way.
Listen, go do the research. 99% of car accidents are human error.
Well,
It's just a
yeah.
fact.
Well, yeah.
So, right now, autonomous cars are already safer, but that's a whole different discussion. But when you talk about autonomous cars, just to get, I don't want to get too technical, but when you talk about autonomous cars, there are a few ways a car can drive itself, right? The obvious way are cameras, but cameras are very limited, right? Because it's too dark at night, if there's fog and things like that, it's not good enough. Then there's radar, right? You all remember like the radar things we had in our cars to detect when there was a cop coming, right? Radar is
I had them. I still have them.
Exactly. Right. So radar is limited in distance. Then there's something called LiDAR, right? When you see an autonomous car today and there's that big thing on the roof of the car, that's LiDAR. That is the most accurate way for an autonomous car to operate. Now, what's the problem? The obvious problem is that it looks ridiculous, right? We're not going to drive around with those things on our roofs, right? Well, comes along an Israeli company and says, let's fix this. And the company's called Innovate, and they built LiDAR that's this big. And I mean, you look at the new BMW 7 Series, fully autonomous cars using Israeli technology. And that's one. The other company that's going to facilitate autonomous cars is, of course, Mobileye. Other leading companies. So when we ride in our cars, and I'm not saying drive, when we ride in our cars in the next couple of years, your car is going to be powered by Israeli technology. There's no discussion, right?
Wow.
That's a fact, right? And that's just transportation. When you talk about, people don't realize this. People talk about the Iron Dome as if, oh yeah, no problem. We'll just detonate rockets midair that are flying at hundreds of miles an hour. You understand? I sat with Dr. Danny Gold, who invented the Iron Dome. He told me this story. Okay, this guy sat with the brightest minds in Israel in a room. He said, rockets are raining down on Israel. We got to solve this problem. And everyone came up with their ideas, and he just, pardon my pun, he just shot them all down. He said, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. And then he came up with this idea to detonate rockets midair. And everyone thought he was absolutely crazy. The Israeli government said it's impossible. The Israeli army said it's impossible. The State Department, everybody told him it's impossible. We have a system that detonates rockets at 96% precision. This is miraculous.
Wild.
But here's the thing. This is the part that people don't know. We talk about the Iron Dome. Those 2 nights when Iran attacked Israel, right? You had 3 aerial defense systems working in unison to perfection. You had the Iron Dome, which is the aerial defense system for the closer rockets. I think it's within 70 or 80 meters or some number. I don't know the exact number. Then you have David Sling, which is, a farther away missile, right? Then you have the Chet, the Arrow, which is outside of Earth's atmosphere. You're detonating rockets and missiles outside of Earth's atmosphere. And these 3 systems worked those nights in unison to perfection. And I'm telling you, you can go listen to the interview with the guy who managed that whole operation. And he said the chances of those 3 systems working the way they worked are statistically impossible. Nothing went wrong. We detonated 99% of ballistic missiles and drones fired. It's unheard of. So from a defense perspective, we're blown away. But how many of us think about the tech involved in this? It is unprecedented. It is unbelievable to watch.